Shalom. I was meditating some today on Philippians chapter 2 and the name above every name. You have a lot of people discuss the sacred name or the name of the Messiah, and they'll talk about how the Messiah has the name above every name. And they assume from, I believe, just a modern English mentality that the phrase name above every name means a name nobody else has and he alone has it. And so you have a lot of sacred name people that will say that this is why Yah has to be the first portion of the Messiah's name, like in Yahshua. And then you'll have some people go so far as to say that the Messiah's name has to be Yahweh, or some variation or pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton, because he has the name above every name. Well, what I'd like to do is talk about what that phrase means biblically, name above every name, particularly by going to the passage where the phrase is used, Philippians chapter 2. In Philippians 2, we have a text that the context is about how that we should be humble people. We should not look out for our own interests, but also the interests of other people. It talks about this in Philippians 2, 1 through 4. I love verse 3. It says, "Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself." So we're to be lowly in our mind. We're to esteem other people when we meet other people, even though it's difficult to do a lot of times because of human nature. But we meet other people and we should say, okay, we need to treat them and love them like we love ourselves, and even go so far as to esteem them better than ourselves. You think about somebody you may hold in high esteem and you would want to treat as better than yourself because you look at them as being better than yourself. And what the Apostle Paul, writing to the church at Philippi, is saying is that when we meet people on a day-to-day basis that may not in society's forms and norms be equivalent with us on a financial level or a success level or something like that, which all are man-made levels to start with. We meet people as Christians, we're to esteem other people better than we do ourselves. So in verse 5 he says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in the Christ Yeshua." So he's talking about the historical person, because he uses the word Christ in relation to the name of Yeshua here. When you look at Philippians 2 in context, you see the part about how we are to be humble, then we are to let the mind of Christ be in us, Philippians 2:5. Even though he existed in this high level, he did not regard equality with Elohim something to be grasped at, but instead he emptied himself, and he made himself of no reputation. Yeshua took upon himself the form of a slave or a bondservant. Once again, the contrast is he's in the form of Elohim. It's his rank or his status, and he takes upon himself the form of a slave. That's the rank or the status of a slave. That's the contrast there between verses 6 and 7. "And he came in the likeness of men," and I take that to mean common man, just a common, everyday, ordinary person. In verse 8, "He was found in appearance as this man. He humbled himself, became obedient to the point of death, even the death on the cross." And so there is a sequence of events how that the Christ Yeshua, the Messiah Yeshua, the anointed one, he had this high-ranking status, but yet in his life he was humble. Although he had the rank of God, he took upon him the rank of a slave. He humbled himself to the point that he was obedient to the death on the torture stake, the death on the cross. All of this leads up to verse 9, where it says, "Therefore the Almighty also has highly exalted him." The word "therefore" carries the sense of because of this or for this reason that I've just mentioned. So because of all of these things that Yeshua did in his life, even to the point of death, the death on the torture stake, notice that's the last sequence of events there. Therefore the Almighty has also highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. So the exaltation comes after the cross. Now, if you think about that, what would the exaltation be? It comes after the cross. What is an exaltation of Yeshua that comes after the cross? The answer is the resurrection. At the resurrection is when the Almighty highly exalted him and gave him the name that is above every name. Now, according to the text in Philippians 2, the name that is above every name here is Yeshua, because in verse 10, Paul goes on to say that at the name of Yeshua every knee should bow, of those in heaven, and of those on earth, and of those under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Yeshua the Messiah is Lord, to the glory of Yahweh the Father, or God the Father. So the exaltation happens at the resurrection after the cross. He's given the name above every name, and that name is Yeshua. Every knee would bow, every tongue would confess. Yeshua is Master. Yeshua is Lord. He's the Master that Yahweh spoke to in Psalm 110, verse 1, where David said, Yahweh says to my Master, sit thou on my right hand until I make thine enemies a footstool for your feet. So the name above every name is Yeshua, and that name wasn't given to him at birth, but rather at his resurrection. And so now you might say, okay, well, what? He was given the name Yeshua at birth. What do you mean at his resurrection? This is where we get into the point that name in this context doesn't just refer to the letters of a name, but it refers to someone's reputation. Although the actual literal name Yeshua was given to the Messiah at birth, according to Matthew 1:21, where the meaning of it was he will save, which is what the name Yeshua means, he will save. Yeshua did not obtain this great reputation until he had lived his entire life in obedience to the Father and submitted even at the end to the point of death on the cross. He did not obtain the greatest reputation above all other names in the earth until Yahweh resurrected him from the dead and seated him at his right hand. And from that point on, he received the name above every name, which means he has the greatest reputation of any individual ever to live on the earth. That is the context of Philippians 2. He was given that at his resurrection. So the name above every name doesn't mean that the Messiah has Yah in his name or that his name is Yahweh. Name above every name doesn't mean he has a name nobody else has. It simply is what he received because of his life of obedience and humility and submission to the Father. He received the greatest reputation of any individual ever to live. Everybody knows about Christ, even if they know him by the name Jesus or Yeshua. They know about the person. He's got the greatest reputation of any person to ever walk the face of the earth. That's the context of Philippians 2, brothers and sisters. Take some time to go back through it. Check it out. Be blessed. I love you. Shalom.